Come on, Annie. Let's go to the movies.
This is the Cinereelists, episode 573. My name is Kyle.
My name is James.
And my name is Zach.
And we're here to talk about movies, movie lists, and movie obsession for the next hour or so. And we're here to discuss the greatest week in movies every year.
The greatest week in movies every year. I think
The
that's how
greatest
they
week in
open the
movies every
show.
year. The greatest night in movies every year?
Sure. The biggest night in Hollywood, I think, is normally how they dub it. But
No, I really like the strongest showing for cinema on an annual basis that covers a 3.5 hour period.
all right. Sure. More like 3.5, but
We're going to talk Oscars.
we're definitely going to talk Oscars. Yes.
Oscar the Grouch, Oscar de la Hoya, all your
Oscar De Laurentiis.
our top 10. Is there an Oscar on that show I've never watched?
Oscar
Yeah,
from
The
The
Office.
Office.
The Office, thank you. Yep.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I already got like 4 in my top 10 list of favorite Oscars.
Did you guys ever see Oscar, the Rocky movie?
What?
Oscar the Rocky movie?
No.
starring
Sylvester Stallone
Sylvester Stallone.
was in Oscar
Sure.
in like 1990.
It's just called Oscar.
Yeah.
What's it
Yeah.
about?
All I remember is he's a wealthy guy and he has big stairs in his mansion. And it's like a period piece. I probably saw it when I was 8.
I
don't
never
know, but
heard of
I'm
this movie.
all of a sudden, I'm really hungry for a hot dog. An Oscar Mayer hot dog.
Yes.
It was
Can you
Oscar
sing the
Mayer
song,
a
James?
guy? Is that a real person or was that made up?
Oscar Mayer?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, definitely a guy.
Definitely a person. Yeah.
Definitely a guy. All right.
Yeah.
If you say so.
The Oscar Mayer plant was here in Madison, Wisconsin for many years.
Oh, the plant as in the place where they made the hot dogs. Got
Yes. Yep. If you want to know how the sausage was made, you could come
The
here.
plant that grows hot dogs.
Yeah, the hot dog plant.
Welcome to the Oscar episode of the Cinereelists. We do this, I think we've done it every year, pretty much, where we recap the Oscars. We made our predictions a couple of weeks ago. We're going to go over pretty much the top line categories and how we did in the Oscar, picks this year. And we're also going to talk an Oscar nominated and Oscar winning film that we haven't been able to discuss yet from last year, that being The Whale. We'll get into that. And we're also going to talk top 10 comeback performances, which is related to those two things in some way, shape, or form. No spoilers yet as to how. All right, you guys, I've silenced you.
That seemed like a really unnecessary qualification for the list.
Okay. Hey, I'm just trying to transition somehow into housekeeping. Before we get into those topics, I need to remind you there's a video version of this podcast on YouTube. If you'd like to hear or watch Zach and Kyle sit in silence for 10 seconds after my last bit, then you should go to YouTube. Search YouTube for Cinereelists. Find us there and subscribe. You could also support the podcast on Patreon at patreon.com/Cinereelists. You could leave us an Apple Podcast review. We'd appreciate that. If you have not done so, you could do it right now. If you're listening to it on an iPhone, just go to the podcast page, scroll down, click leave a review, give us 5 stars only, maybe leave us a little bit of text, and possibly we'll read it on the podcast. Or you could send us a listener email to heyguys@cinereelists.com. Email address is in the description of this video and or episode. Maybe send us how well you did on the Oscars. I'm curious, out of all of our listeners, who did the best and who did the worst on their Oscar picks. I'm curious. That being said, you guys ready to get into talking Oscars?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. So, yeah, it was the 95th annual Oscars last night, which kind of throws me off. Every time I see it, it feels like this is the Oscars from 1995 for some reason. I really think they should sync up the number with the year. So this should be
Okay.
the 23rd or 22nd annual Oscars. That way I can just, square it in
That's
my brain.
not how counting works, James.
I think it should.
Okay.
I think it should.
Well.
I understand that's not how it does, but my brain thinks that's how it should work. Yeah, so broadly, before we get into the categories, you guys watch the Oscars. How did it feel?
I thought it was great this year.
Okay.
I thought it was super well produced. There was almost nothing like cringy or like embarrassing about it. It flowed really well. There was not a ton of fluff.
Mhm.
Overall, some really great wins, great speeches. I was very happy with the Oscars this year. I thought it was extremely well produced.
Yeah, it felt like classic Oscars to me, whatever that means.
Mhm.
Maybe because we've had some strange Oscars last couple of years because of the pandemic.
Mhm.
So to see it back in a huge theater and not the glamour, but just kind of the showiness of it all
Mhm.
was a lot of fun. I was not looking forward to Jimmy Kimmel coming back, but he didn't annoy me too much.
Mhm.
I would say he was hit and miss. He had some really good jokes and some not great ones. He joked a lot more about Will Smith and the slap than I thought he would, but none of it seemed out of place or mean-spirited.
He didn't harp on it.
Right. Yeah. There's like a couple at the beginning. I really liked his special cutting joke of like, if anyone assaults anyone on stage, you'll be awarded Best Actor and given a chance for 19-minute speech. I thought that was
Mhm.
pretty clever.
That's funny.
Yeah, I thought his jokes to it were about as tasteful as they could be, I would
Right.
say, without naming people too. Like he never once said Will Smith or Chris Rock or Slap or anything like that. They were like jokes that danced around it a little bit. And also they kind of seemed more like jokes about the Academy more than the people that were involved
Yeah.
in the actual incident from last year. I thought that was kind of subtly tactful. So that way they can address it, but they were kind of making fun of their own response to it and not necessarily like people having meltdowns or people, getting hurt on stage. Although he did make a joke about getting assaulted and stuff like that. And I also thought they moved on from it. They kind of made the one joke right at the beginning, and I don't remember them really mentioning it again for the most part. Did he mention it more than just the beginning?
He did.
He did
Okay.
before they presented Best Documentary Award,
Mhm.
which is when it happened last year.
Mhm.
He said like, hopefully this time we'll go off without a hitch or without hitch.
Oh, I did not catch that.
Oh, you missed that one.
I mean, I heard him say it, but I did not catch the pun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
In years past, Jimmy Kimmel has done these like really atrocious gimmicky set pieces, like ordering the pizzas and handing it out, or like having tourists come on a bus, and like
Mhm.
they take up so much time and they're not funny. And he didn't do one of those this year, and I'm really glad about it.
He kind of tried with the let's ask the audience questions bit,
Mhm.
and like that fell flat. Like Malala
It did.
was not happy. Like she was not didn't want to be part of her joke. A very serious filmmaker
Yeah,
person.
I agree.
and-
Colin Farrell was funny during it though.
Yeah, he was all right. And then they made a Matt Damon joke out of it, which I guess if you followed Jimmy Kimmel 15 years ago, you would get that he doesn't like Matt Damon jokingly.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he really wasn't on the show much at all, to be honest.
Which is fine. Yeah.
Right.
Which is great. Yeah. I like there being a host, but not like a super present host.
Yeah. And I'm kind of glad they didn't. I know there was talk about having Chris Rock host it and stuff like that, and I'm glad they didn't do that, because then it would have been, I don't know, just would have been awkward. Even though Chris Rock has no fault, in my opinion, in what happened last year, it just would have been every time he came on screen, it would have been a reminder of what happened last year.
Yeah.
Whether he was talking about that or not. So, yeah, I mean, I think Jimmy Kimmel's a nice guy. Most people like him. He's generally affable, even when his jokes bomb. He's smiling about it, and so you feel all right about it for the most part. But yeah, what was odd is we didn't get all those skits and annoying things, and it still 3.5 hours long somehow.
It didn't feel long to me though. Like
Right.
some years it feels like it's just dragging and dragging and dragging. This
Sure.
one, it felt like it was going at a pretty good pace.
Yeah.
They joked about it being long, but it didn't feel long.
hmm I really
We-
like the set design this year with like the really big screens and the
Yeah.
side shot where they would put the person's name and what movie they won
Yeah.
for. Instead of doing like a lower thirds, they just like built it into the set. I thought that was
Super cool. And they, anytime someone was walking down, to start their speech, they'd have pictures all around of like movies they were in. It was really cool.
I thought the camera for the presenters and the winners was very in your
close.
face. Not in necessarily a bad way, but I don't know. It felt like they were kind of framing it to like look good on a phone to be watched later.
interesting.
Yeah, it was too close.
It was very zoomed in. I'm wondering if they're trying to visually separate themselves from like the Golden Globes and some of the other award ceremonies, and that's why they did that. I don't know, but it was very close.
Oh,
For sure.
it wasn't zoomed in. They would do wide shots, and at the end of the stage, there was a camera on an arm right in front of the presenter. So if you were in the audience watching someone win an award and you were like in the middle, you wouldn't be able to see anyone accepting their award because there's gonna be a camera on an arm right in front of you.
Do you remember that one woman that had the huge white dress
The
that
veil.
like, completely blocked the person behind them?
Mhm.
I've seen a
that's-
lot of jokes on Twitter about like I was at the Oscars, but you can't see me.
Yeah, that person is getting dragged a little bit on Twitter because people are saying it was inconsiderate of her to wear that dress to the Oscars. How do you guys feel about that?
So do we know who she is?
I've seen it, but she's not a name that I think
Okay.
you'd know off the top of your head.
Would the collective we react differently if it was Angela Bassett wearing that dress?
I think it's a little inconsiderate knowing that someone's going to be sitting behind you. It's like wearing a top hat at a movie theater. You just don't do it.
But do you think people would care as much if it was a famous, well-known actor?
I don't think that they would drag her as much
Okay.
if it was Angela Bassett, but I think it would just,
It's
if you try to be more objective about it, I think it probably would be as
still as
inconsiderate.
inconsiderate, yeah.
Evidently, it's a musician named Thames,
Thames.
who I'd never heard of.
Well, don't give her the satisfaction of listening to her on Spotify.
No, I don't think you need to affect her livelihood over this.
No, I'm just
This
saying.
can just be a teachable moment.
Let's not encourage this behavior in the future, James.
I mean, I understand the criticism, and I don't think it's unmerited criticism, but I doubt she wore it intentionally to block people. I think it probably never crossed her mind.
Of course,
that,
right,
that
absolutely,
was going
yeah.
to be a
That's
thing.
I think that's what inconsiderate means. You weren't considering.
That's true. Yeah, I guess so. But you can be intentionally inconsiderate, and you can be accidentally inconsiderate. I bet this was an accident.
For sure.
Yeah.
She's not like, oh, whoever's behind me, I'm getting them. Getting them good.
No, I bet she wasn't even like, well, this will probably block the person behind me, but I like the dress. I'm going to do it. I bet that didn't even come across her mind.
It did not cross her mind at all. Not at all.
Or maybe it did. I'd have no idea who she is or what she thinks, but I'm assuming she didn't think that. Okay. So generally, we all liked it. I think overall it was unoffensively uneventful. Inoffensively, I don't know what the term would be, how you would say that. Like I think there's a little bit of a danger to like what happened last year or the Oscar envelope mix-up from a few years back to like judge these things against like how memorable the moments are and things like that. And I do think this one had moments for sure, but I'm not sure they'll stick out like, somebody getting slapped on stage or.
I want to
something like
separate
that.
out like if it was eventful or not from like if it had drama or
Right.
not.
Sure.
Like there were no like drama moments or controversies, but there is some. I'm really happy with some of the people that won Oscars. Like
Sure.
it's great to see Jamie Lee Curtis win an Oscar. And Huey Kwan
Mhm.
and so those Michelle Yeoh. It was really fun to see Brendan Fraser. It was really fun to see those people win Oscars.
You'll list all Quiet on the Western Front.
Yeah. And I think that is memorable in a way, like Harrison Ford giving the Oscar, to Short Round. Like, it was very
Sure.
cool.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
I thought there were some great speeches, especially on some of those higher level Oscars. When they were given the chance to talk, the messages and what they brought to the table, I thought was interesting.
Yeah. Some of the lower ones too, like the guy who won for editing for Everything Everywhere All at Once, who was like, man, this is my second movie. You guys are setting the bar high or something like that. He's like, oh man, I don't know where to go from here. Almost. I like that guy. There was a couple others. The guy who won for the RRR song, kind of singing to the audience and changing the lyrics. I thought that was
cool. Yeah,
that was awesome.
Navalny had a powerful acceptance speech, obviously.
For sure. Definitely. I think a lot of people probably don't have any reference for what that documentary is or what it's about. And I think probably just their acceptance speech, had a lot of Googling, following it up, hopefully.
Has the average person not heard of Navalny?
I had a vague awareness of who he was, and the documentary definitely fills you in.
Okay. I knew who he was. I didn't know there was a documentary about him until you mentioned on the podcast at some point in the last couple months, James.
Sure. Yeah. It's a good one. I think it's on Amazon, so it's free and available to people. Maybe HBO, probably HBO. But it's good. All right, let's talk some of Oscar firsts that happened this year. We know Everything Everywhere All at Once was kind of the big winner of the night. It's also the first science fiction movie to win Best Picture.
No, is that true?
Yeah.
It's the very first.
Really?
Yep. There's certainly been other nominations. 2001. Lots of other science fiction movies have been nominated, but it is the first.
Wow.
It's also the first film to win Best Picture and 3 of the top acting awards. It's the third film ever to win the 3 top acting awards, and the first since 1976. So a movie hasn't won 3 of the top acting awards since 1976.
Okay, I was having trouble following that one.
Sure. In 1976, that movie was called Network. Have you guys seen Network?
Yeah, I've seen Network. Have you seen Network?
I have, yes.
Okay.
Zach?
Yes.
Thus concludes the Network check-in. What about 1951's A Streetcar Named Desire? That was the first to win 3 of the top acting awards.
Seen it.
Never seen it. Never seen it.
It's good.
1 for 2. Also related to Everything Everywhere All at Once, A24 became the first ever production company to win 6 of the 7 top line awards at the Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Original Screenplay, and all 4 of the acting awards.
Wow. So no studios ever won all 7.
No studios
A24
ever won all 7. Yeah.
Even
A24 is the only one to get all 6.
Mm-hmm.
Even the
only one to
studio
get 6
didn't
out of 7.
do it. I mean, obviously it didn't, but I'm surprised.
Not
Whoever
from what I
did
understand.
Titanic. Okay.
I don't think Titanic won 3 of the acting awards, because who would it go to?
Billy Zane.
It won Best Actress and Best Supporting Actress.
Okay.
Yeah, not even acting.
But I guess Leo didn't win Best Actor.
Yep. It also, Everything Everywhere All at Once, won the most Oscars for a Best Picture winner in over a decade. Going back to what? 2008 Best Picture winner. What was the last movie over a decade ago that won 7 awards, including
Would that
Best
be
Picture?
The Hurt Locker?
Nope. You're
Was it the year
1
before
year
that?
off. You're 1 year
Okay.
off. The year before Hurt Locker.
Oh.
Any guess, Zach?
I Googled it.
Well, Zach's out. Kyle?
I can't think. So it's a 2007 movie. I can't think of it. What is it?
Slumdog Millionaire.
Slumdog Millionaire.
This year was also the first time in almost 20 years that all 4 acting Oscars went to first-time winners. No repeats
Oh, that's
this year.
fun.
Yeah, that was crazy. That I mean, like if you, it's sort of not success stories. Yeah, it's like success stories for all of them. Comeback stories for a lot of them.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that like Michelle Yeoh, kind of a prestige actress, even though she's never really won, but like people hold her in like high regard as far as, you know, being an actress. Then you got Jamie Lee Curtis, who's in genre movies and has always kind of been relegated to those types of movies.
Mhm.
It's not really taken super seriously as like a dramatic actress. You got Brendan Fraser, who was a heartthrob kind of comedic actor, action guy, and then he disappears for many years and comes back. And then you got Ke Huy Quan, who I don't think anybody knew his real name until this year, because you know, he was a kid actor that was in kind of 2 movies and then relatively disappeared, and then he comes back. So you had
Encino
all
Man.
kinds of different comebacks. You know what I mean? This year they were like all over the place, I would say.
Is it safe to say that Jamie Lee Curtis winning is kind of the surprise / upset of the night? If you were to call any one of these an upset or a big surprise?
That was the only one that surprised me. I wouldn't say I was surprised because I didn't know who was going to win that category, but she was not the top of my list
Right.
as far as
Yeah.
who I thought would win.
I'm sure you've seen the video of when they announce the award and you see Jamie Lee Curtis, who's like mouthing "shut up," she can't believe it. But then there's also the shot of Angela Bassett and her face just kind of drops and you just feel really bad for her in that moment.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure she was happy for Jamie Lee Curtis, but at the same time was quite disappointed that that was not her name being said.
Yeah. I think it might just be that I'm in the YouTube rabbit hole of like pre-awards for this type of stuff, but Jamie Lee campaigned for this award.
Okay.
And used her personality. Like if I was an Academy voter and maybe 1/10 of the amount of videos I watched of Jamie Lee talking about the movie and, you know, her part in it and stuff like that got in front of me, I would have voted for her too, because she just seemed so earnest and excited just to be, you know, invited to the party type of thing, and excited about what the movie she was in, like people who were marginalized, letting her be a part of their group.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And she's like, I have all the privilege in the world, and yet these people open the doors for me and they let me do crazy things on camera, and now they're successful and they've brought me along for the ride type of thing. That was like her narrative for all these kind of pre-voting interviews. And I think that would have worked on me if I was a voter. I would have been like, yeah, I like her. Another first, Avatar: The Way of Water had a first, believe it or not. It won Best Visual Effects, the only award it won, and is only the 3rd film to win Oscars for both the Part 1 and Part 2 of a movie series.
Okay.
What are the other 2 movie series that
The
have done that?
Godfather.
The Godfather, yep.
And any Oscar for Part 1 and Part 2?
Any Oscar. There's only
It's
2 other franchises that have done it. Godfather
probably
and
Jurassic
Runner?
Park is my guess.
nope.
What'd you
Lord of the
say,
Rings.
Zach?
Blade Runner?
Not Blade Runner. Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings. Oh, okay.
Lord of the Rings is the other one.
Wait, so no other franchise besides those 3 has more than one movie in the franchise won an Oscar?
Nope. Has Part 1 and Part 2 specifically won an Oscar.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Maybe there's one that went 1 and 3 or 1 and later on or something like that.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure the Marvel movies, if you count them all as a series, you could probably find Oscars down the chain for visual effects at minimum type of thing. But
What about like Toy Story?
I don't know. You'll have to look into it.
Did Toy Story 2 win Best Picture or Best Animated?
Animated movies aren't movies. Come on, guys.
That's not what they said at the Oscars.
No.
Another first, Guillermo del Toro won Best Animated Feature for Pinocchio
Again, don't care. Not movie.
and became the first first director, I should say, to win Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Animated Feature. He's the first one to win all three. And this isn't really a first, but I found it interesting. The Fabelmans, Tar, and the Banshees of Inisherin got 22 nominations combined this year. Didn't win a single one.
Same for didn't Elvis did not win either, correct? Anything.
Elvis didn't win any either.
So you could group that in there too.
I thought that All Quiet on the Western Front kind of sucked up more awards than it was worthy of.
I agree. Pretty much everything I thought Elvis was going to win, All Quiet on the Western Front won instead.
Mhm.
And I mean, I did notice on my Twitter feed, I had tons of promoted tweets about All Quiet on the Western Front, about on the technical side of things.
Mhm.
And I wonder if they just campaigned really hard for those. Not that it's not a technically impressive movie, but you know, along the same lines that Jamie Lee Curtis was campaigning hard for that. I wonder if All Quiet was doing the exact same thing, or Netflix in that case.
I was fine with all the awards they got, except for maybe score. I didn't fully understand that one because I don't remember there being anything super remarkable about the score.
I think
All
it's the
Quiet
most
on the
memorable
Western
of the five of them. It's got that 3-note motif. That
You
sounds
thought
very
All
Alex
Quiet had a
Garland-ish.
more memorable score than Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Yeah,
Not me.
I agree.
I've listened to that soundtrack a bunch.
Oh,
I don't-
so that's why you would remember it.
Yeah.
I don't remember. No, I mean,
how many-
it was good enough that I actually wanted to do that.
How many times did you listen to the All Quiet on the Western Front soundtrack?
None, because it was
Okay, well, there we
unremarkable,
go.
so I didn't even think about ever re-listening to it on my own. So even Babylon had a better score than All Quiet. I thought All Quiet had like
All Quiet had a good. Every time they won an award and they played the music, I was like, "This is good music."
Yeah.
it had an expected score. These
Well,
are
everything about All
these are
Quiet was
awards for
expected.
exceptional, not expected.
Like they won for production design,
Mm-hmm.
but like they just recreated trench warfare.
It's a war movie, yeah.
Like every other every World War I movie has very convincing trenches. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
they didn't do anything spectacular beyond that.
Yeah. I agree.
That was the one I thought Elvis really was going to win. It was production design, because Baz Luhrmann's all about production and the showiness of what he's putting on screen.
Mm-hmm. How'd you guys feel about the In Memoriam?
Liked it.
Yeah, I liked John Travolta's little opening. It was very heartfelt. Obviously, he had connected to Olivia Newton-John through that.
Yeah, and what's her name? His Look Who's Talking co-star passed away this year.
Kirstie
too.
Alley. Yeah, I forgot that she
Kirstie
had
Alley
passed away. I
was
mean,
in
I
there, too.
remembered when I saw it on the screen there, but
Some notable omissions from the In Memoriam this year. I really only had 3 that I recognized, and it was like, oh, that
And
would have been
James is
nice.
really trying to get something controversial out of this Oscars.
I really am.
He's like,
Um,
they didn't talk about Anne Heche.
That's who's on
He's
my
mad.
list.
yeah.
Why did they don't have to talk about her, just give her 3-second slide. How hard is that?
From what I understand,
Mm-hmm.
there's 17 different like orgs within the Academy,
Right.
and they all get the same allotted time, and each one gets to nominate who is on the board for their like organization, you know, for like the thing that they deal with.
Mhm.
And so for the like actors thing, they just didn't have enough time for those actors.
Just get rid of all the below the line people. We just want solid actors up there. Actors and directors. That's all anybody
Yeah.
cares about.
You know what? It doesn't. The people behind the scenes don't really matter.
Right.
They don't do much at all. Who cares? Don't even give them credits. Just I want to see the stars.
Yeah. I mean, that being said, I want shorter credits too. Just actors and directors, and then that's the end of the credits at movies. Let's go
We
right
should
to the
give people
stingers.
credit due for their hard work on anything.
for sure.
You know, James, I think you should stop taking credit for your work. It's taking too much of your client's time. It really should just be.
I agree.
It's out there, and that's what matters.
I'm just saying, I'm not there for the Anne Heche. I'm not there
Oh,
for it.
you worked too hard on that one.
Also missing, that would have
I
been
didn't get
nice. And hate. Also missing Charlby Dean, who was in Triangle of Sadness. I think that would have
Yeah.
been notable because she was pretty young for sure. And
Yep.
that seemed like the kind of movie that would have gotten her more work. And Tom Sizemore.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he was a 90s guy all over Hollywood. And he definitely had his demons in the 90s and beyond. I'm wondering if that's why he wasn't selected, really. But that was a big name who died relatively young this year or this past year. So I had a few favorite moments from this year, just 3. The Ke Huy Quan winning and his speech, which was totally expected and lived up to the hype, I guess, I would say. I loved that. I loved Indiana Jones' short round moment that Zach already mentioned. That was awesome. And Jamie Lee's speech. I'm not sure necessarily she should have won when I look at like the other nominees. I didn't particularly love Angela Bassett in Wakanda Forever either. She was fine. I just don't think it's anything amazing. But her speech and like just her general vibe was fun to watch. Was there anything else you guys remember that stood out?
Yeah, I have a couple. I guess they're minor complaints.
Oh, these aren't
Yeah.
favorite moments. These are complaints. Let's hear 'em.
No, I mean we can save complaints for later if you like.
No, we're in the twilight of this discussion,
Okay.
Kyle. If you're gonna get it out, get it out.
I was unimpressed with the performance of the song from Everything Everywhere All at Once with Stephanie Hsu and David Byrne.
Well, I mean, anything that followed up that RRR performance is gonna have a problem.
Right. Well, I also felt like that song is very. It's a challenging song to perform. There's a lot of space in it. Like, doesn't have like a big heavy beats to it. It's so there's a lot of
Mhm.
open space for the vocalists, and there's a lot of atonal harmonies to it. And I think just it did not come together in a live setting. So I guess I more felt bad for them. I was listening to it. I thought this sounds bad. I understand why it sounds bad. It's not necessarily the musician's fault. It's more the song and the performance space.
Mhm.
And I guess I don't want to go down as like a worse Oscar moment because there was things outside of kind of their control that was causing it to sound as bad as it did.
I don't think anyone was offended by it or,
I hope not.
railing against it. Yeah.
Sure.
Also, that nice little moment of corporate synergy where you had the Little Mermaid trailer during the Oscars, care of ABC/Disney.
It's pretty shameless.
Yeah, yeah. And
It was, but one thing that I kind of enjoyed that they did is they led up to that, right? And then it just went straight into commercial afterwards. So it's almost as if it was just a lead up and then it was just another commercial. And they did the same thing with Warner Brothers. They had a Warner Brothers montage that just led right into commercials. And so it kind of was a seamless way to start commercials.
And also an admission that that's basically all they were doing was playing commercials on the Oscars.
Yeah.
I did like the Cocaine Bear skit. I thought that could have been stupid and kind of worked. I mean, it's such a silly premise. And it's the exact opposite of the seriousness of the Oscars. Like, let's just bring out this stupid idea and this stupid costume and have fun with it.
I was impressed with the bear costume. I thought it looked good.
The size of it?
No, just the design of it.
Yeah.
I thought it looked more realistic than other bear costumes I've seen.
I wasn't annoyed by that part, and I mentioned this to Zach, I guarantee that's going to be the moment when people watch this back 10 years from now and they're like, what culturally is this about? You know what I mean? Because Cocaine Bear is like a thing right now in this moment, but in the next 3 weeks, people will have forgotten about Cocaine Bear, just like they forgot about Snakes on a Plane and all these other meme movies. And so whatever, it's fine. It's not a big deal, but it's definitely an in the moment joke that will not stand the test of time at all. I don't think Cocaine Bear is destined for cult classic or anything like that. So I don't know.
I will say Megan was a little annoyed every time Everything Everywhere All at Once won an award. Not because she didn't like the movie, but she just doesn't care for the hot dog fingers. And that was a visual they would show every time that movie won. So she's like, no, not hot dog fingers again.
Such a small part of the movie too, relatively, but they definitely like that visual.
Well, I think if you don't know what this movie's about, that's a good visual reference of like, oh, there's people with hot dog fingers. Oh, like, okay, this is a weirdo movie then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess. Any other complaints or favorite moments we're missing? I guess not.
No.
Awesome. Let's talk how we did then. So I got 16 out of the 23 major categories,
Wow.
which is pretty good.
Pretty good.
To okay for how I normally do.
I got 11 out of the 23.
Ooh.
So just under half.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I forgot to tally mine up, but I think that I got them all.
Every
I got
single
100%.
one.
I think so, probably.
If I had gone with all of my shoulds instead of my wills, I would have gotten 11. So I would have done worse. Would have done worse. But there were 3 that I picked for should that actually won. It's just
So
most of my shoulds,
wills.
but far more of my shoulds didn't win. But there were 3 that I picked the winner on should over will. So maybe I should go with my gut.
Yeah.
Approximately 17% of the time.
I would say 2 of my shoulds
Actually
won over my wills.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, roughly the same pace as mine, I would say. 14 is like a normal year for me. I can typically hit 14 regularly. So 16 is a little higher than that, but not my record. I don't think I've ever broken 20. And that was back when there were 24 categories. I think 19 maybe is like the highest I've ever gotten. But I'll take 16. Not bad. Not good enough to win any decently sized Oscar pool, though.
I think what was my undoing was for almost every technical award, I went Elvis.
Oh, okay.
And that won nothing. So,
sure.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Elvis hurt me a couple times, too.
Right. I would say in the middle of that broadcast, when when All Quiet on the Western Front was winning every single technical award, I was starting to wonder if they were going to get Best Picture, if this was like some momentum that was being built up for them.
That would have been such a balloon pop.
Oh, a disappointment, like, for sure.
I mean, not only that, but producer of the year was whoever decided to put Indiana Jones on the stage to introduce that last award, because they knew what they were doing. They were like, everything everywhere all at once is probably going to win.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to put Harrison Ford up there. And when they win, Ke Kwan will not be able to contain himself. There will be a moment here, guaranteed, with Indiana Jones and Short Round together again. And they were right. Worked perfect.
But we could have had a bunch of German producers politely shaking hands with Harrison Ford. That could have been the moment right there.
Yeah. I really want to make a joke right now that I'm not going to make, but
good call.
Right. Because they don't deserve it. But all right. Anything else for the Oscars? I mean, they don't deserve it, as in that would be mean to the All Quiet people. We're not going to talk about this anymore. Speaking of Oscar winners, one performance that we're going to discuss in full here in a minute was the performance of Brendan Fraser in The Whale, which is a movie that came out last year. He just won the Best Actor award for his performance in the movie. And so we're going to talk about it right after this clip.
She saved him. She wasn't trying to hurt him. She was trying to help him.
Who are you talking about?
He's going home. She did that.
Charlie.
She didn't do it to hurt him. She did it to send him home.
Do you feel lightheaded, Charlie? Look at me.
She's trying to help him.
Who?
Ellie. She was trying to help him. She just wanted to send him home. Do you ever get the feeling that people are incapable of not caring?
That was The Whale. This is a 2022 American psychological drama directed by Darren Aronofsky and written by Samuel D. Hunter, who wrote the play of the same name in 2012. The film stars Brendan Fraser, Sadie Sink, Hong Chow, Ty Simpkins, and Samantha Morton. Pretty much only them as well. The official IMDb plot synopsis for The Whale is: a reclusive, morbidly obese English teacher attempts to reconnect with his estranged teenage daughter. We've seen the movie. I saw it a little while back in the movie theater. Haven't rewatched it. So it's not that there's a whole lot to remember from it, I would say. I think it's a fairly straightforward movie. But I know it's fresher for you guys. So what'd you guys think of The Whale?
Go ahead, Zach.
Okay. No, you go ahead.
No. After you. Okay. All right. I'll go ahead. I'm not sure if I liked this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I saw it a couple days ago, and I think I'm still processing. I'm still mixed on it. I don't think I disliked it, but I don't know if I liked it, if that makes sense. I can tell you what things I did like, and we can break it down. I thought performances from at least the two main ones, Brendan Fraser and Ellen Chow, is that her name?
Hong Chow.
Hong Chow, thank you. Tortillas. That's all I can think of her as. I thought they were both great. And like when I first saw Brendan Fraser, I was seeing Brendan Fraser in prosthetics.
Mm-hmm.
But then as the movie went on, I saw more of the character, and I also saw just how much expressionism that Fraser could show through his eyes. Since he had so much makeup and prosthetics on, he did so much acting with his eyes that I was really impressed by that. And then Hong Chow, I thought she had her great moments. I liked her character a lot. The Sadie Sink character, the teenage daughter, I had no problem with her performance, but the character itself, I had problems with it. Like, she felt really one-dimensional, and she was supposed to be this central character to Charlie. Is that the name of Brendan Fraser's character?
Like I said,
I don't
it's been
remember.
3 months, so I don't remember.
Yeah. Anyway,
I can look it up.
Like
Charlie. Yes, it is
yes,
Charlie.
or Charlie. She's sort of this central motivation to him to like reconnect with his estranged teenage daughter. And I just found her character so unbelievable and awful every time she was on screen. And I have some questions about her that I want to talk in spoilers. So I was kind of mixed on that. I also, I guess at times this movie felt like it was gawking at an obese person. Like it was a little bit of, it felt like a little bit of freak show. Like there'll be scenes of like, oh, look at him bathing himself and look at him trying to stand up. And I don't think the movie was trying to do that necessarily, but that's what kind of came across. I mean, like the only character who thought that Charlie was a monster was Charlie himself. Like he thought he wasn't fit for the world. No other characters really felt that for the most part, but the movie itself, at times, I don't think it handled it very well. And then there's also this whole side story with this missionary kid, which every time he was on screen, I was ready to move on to something else. I was not interested in that whatsoever. So I don't know. I'm kind of all over the place on this movie. That was my word vomit. Zach, would you like to go with that?
Sure. I definitely think this movie has a mix of things that are really noteworthy and things that didn't quite work for me. I'll start with the things that didn't work for me. some of the scenes, I'll take the first one, for example, felt very much like I could absolutely see it on script, like see it on paper, and it works as a script. But
Yep.
when you actually act it out, it seems so artificial. You know, the movie starts with him thinking that he's dying, and someone happens to be at the door at that exact moment, and he like orders him to read him an essay, you know? And in script form, like it works, but like when you actually act it out, it just feels so artificial. Now, thematically, plot wise, arcs, you know, everything, it fits. Like it's all like coherent with the story it's trying to tell. It wraps all that up in a tidy little bow. And so as an artificial kind of creation, it works just fine. If you're going for some sort of like just realistic drama, it falls short of that because of that artifice. But this isn't totally trying to go for realistic drama. It's trying to go for, yeah, deeper themes and archetypes and things like that, I think. You know, we're not trying to get 100% just realism because everything in the story is so compact, you know, and that kind of thing. Just the fact that it's like told in 1 week, and that's very much called out in the movie.
Mhm.
And yeah, some of the characters are so I guess 1 or 2 dimensional. Like, for instance, this missionary kid. It's almost like a parody how just he's written, you know? It's very much just like let's make this as generic as possible. And very often you didn't get a sense of why characters gravitated towards characters, you know, like him as a teacher, I didn't really believe those kind of things. Now, okay, so those I felt like were some of the negatives, and I have one more negative too, but I will say though, on the other hand, this movie was a very, very emotional movie for me to watch.
Yeah.
It certainly made an impact. I had to stop it several times and like come back to it. Just because in my personal life, a lot of it hit really close to home. My dad was almost exactly his same weight.
Mhm.
And I would say the physicality is and all the like little details surrounding the struggles and the daily life of someone at that weight felt just 100% true to life to what I experienced with my dad. And it was almost jarring how some of the things felt so real in that sense. I have quibbles of things that like were not, I would say, accurate. But the actual like physicality of his life, like how he moved, how he breathed, how he talked, how he would accomplish certain things were just so eerily accurate that it was hard to watch at times. Now, on the other hand, how he acted and thought of himself and spoke about himself, those felt like how a skinny person would imagine someone of his size talking or feeling.
Mhm.
Some of that at least didn't ring true to me when I thought about my dad. How he would have referred to himself or talked about himself, or it felt much more like, yeah, a person imagining what that person would think of themselves or how they would binge eat if they were upset, or, you know, like they were just a little bit more on the nose than I thought was realistic when the look of everything was so realistic. So yeah, so I don't know, from that perspective, it would be impossible for me to give this movie a bad rating because it had a huge impact on me. But I do think that Darren Aronofsky as a director can give us really, really interesting things. But I think usually he's a flawed director in some of his ways. Usually in the writing, I would love for him to find a really good collaborator I think he could make amazing things. But yeah, that's my quick thoughts on that.
Zach, it's interesting that you bring up your father, because as Meg and I were watching this, I was definitely thinking about you and your dad. And I was curious to know if you're going to talk about it on the podcast or not. Because it was,
Yeah.
just, I mean, having been around you and your dad for 30 years, I was definitely thinking about all that too. So I'm glad you
Oh,
felt
yeah,
comfortable bringing it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was yeah, there's so many things. There's quite a few things that don't correlate,
Right.
but there were so many things that felt very true to life, true to hit close to home. So it was a very interesting movie to watch
Yeah.
for sure.
I I like this movie. I do agree that Darren Aronofsky is generally a flawed director. When it works, it really works. And when it doesn't work, generally he's cast his movies well enough that it saves it. And I think that's what's going on here is like pretty much everyone on the cast, whether you bought their character whether you enjoyed their character arc or not, I think it's pretty undeniable that they're all good at what they're doing on screen. You know what I mean? Like Brendan Fraser, even if you don't like the movie in general, it's real easy to see his performance and be like, he did a good job with what was handed to him. Even like certainly, what's the name of the nurse? I just said her name.
Hong Chow?
Hong Chow is awesome. She's probably even better than Fraser, I would say, as far as just like I bought her character hook, line, and sinker. With him, it's a little hard. Like there are moments, I know it was pretty much all prosthetics, but there were moments that kind of felt CG-ish with him. I don't know if they filled in things with CG or like
I
fixed
believe there
scenes or
is
stuff.
some, I think it's mostly prosthetics, but there is some CG support.
Yeah, there's a couple moments like when he put his arm around people where it was like that arm is not actually pressing into their shirt. Like, why is that type of thing? So I'm assuming that's a CG thing. But anyway, but Hong Chow, I completely believed. Sadie Sink, I agree, relatively one-dimensional, but I could see a young person acting in that way, having that kind of anger without really being able to express what the core of the issue is. That type of stuff, and even the missionary character doesn't have a whole lot to do in the movie. But I believe that kid was that person. So, point is, I don't really like the story of this movie. I thought it was this is an Aronofsky theme, and sometimes it really works for me. The darkness really works for me in Mother. Really works for me in Requiem for a Dream. Black Swan. These are all kind of dark dramas for the most part, and it really works for me. And in this one, didn't really work for me. I was just kind of like looking for the light in this movie, looking for somebody to learn something. And really, it's like this nice guy who's had a pretty tragic existence, who has decided that he's going to commit suicide on some level. He has an odd way of doing it, I would say, a very self-destructive way, a very slowly self-destructive way of doing it. I guess anybody who's looking to commit suicide is self-destructive in some level, but he's slowly doing it. I think it's a movie about shame and, not being able to deal with one's feelings or reconcile judgment from others. I think there's lots of themes going on in here, none of which feel completely fully formed. And so you're just kind of left with this weird darkness that you don't fully understand why it exists. I would say there's lots of like implied things that you may or may not have caught. And I think I caught most of them. I'm just not sure it justified a nice guy doing that to himself. Even though the bulk of whatever he's doing to himself happened way before the movie even started. And yeah. And so I liked it, but only because of the performances, not because of the story or even the presentation. It all felt very normally presented, which is odd because Darren Aronofsky is a guy who definitely can make a visual movie. And I'm not sure he really did that here other than putting a body shape that we don't typically see as a lead in movies, like front and center through an entire movie. So yeah, I like the movie, but pretty much only because of the acting in it.
Yeah. There's also this theme of Moby Dick that didn't feel fully formed either. Like the movie's called The Whale. It's obviously works on multiple levels, but the Moby Dick stuff was just kind of scattered here and there. It didn't quite fully land for me.
It kind of felt
You
like
know,
they wanted to name it that because of the body type of the main star, and then they like shoehorned all that other stuff in to justify calling it that.
Well,
so much of this plot seems reverse engineered. Like
yeah,
they're like, okay, we have this idea of like Moby Dick and the whale. So he's got to have an essay about Moby Dick. So let's make him an English teacher that's teaching a class about essays, and you know what I mean? Like it just feels like totally reverse engineered from like what we want, which is why the movie starts and ends with this essay, you know? But yeah, it seems a little forced. That being said, that like last line that he repeats a way too many times is an interesting line, and it's one that the movie doesn't give you any time to breathe to like ponder about. But it is an interesting thing to ponder, you know, the meaning of it for those characters.
So this movie is based on a play.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And so, I mean, right now I do wonder how much of that play was reverse engineered by, you know, the original writer. I also felt like I was watching a play at times based on how some characters would like just carry themselves. Like the single room didn't bother me. That was fine. But there was multiple times where like a character would storm out the door, and then just before they left, they would stop, take a beat, and then turn around. And I felt like just such a play thing to do, because it's just so big of like storm and stop and then spin around. And then same for the actress who played his ex-wife. She had a couple scenes, and she had one scene where she really lays into him, and that just felt like her acting was play acting. Like she was playing to the back of the room, even though we were watching a movie.
Yeah. I mean, I felt it too, but it didn't really bother me because it was just kind of like a style. I felt like a choice and not an accident that it felt like a stage play.
Yeah.
So I was okay with it, but
I guess it felt jarring to me to see people acting like they were in a play.
Yeah.
It felt fourth wall breaking, I guess.
I've never had somebody in my life that like I had to take care of or navigate those types of issues. So I have a hard time criticizing like some of the decisions of the surrounding characters around him. But as somebody who's never dealt with that, it's hard for me to think of like a nurse, like the Hung Chau character, like Hung Chau played, like not, I don't know. If somebody is obviously suicidal and like literally saying they're trying to kill themselves this way, like don't you have a moral obligation to intervene? Like if somebody was waving a gun around saying the same thing, wouldn't you have a moral obligation to? I don't know. It just seemed odd for of all people, a nurse to just kind of not only allow this to happen, but bring the guy a full bucket of fried chicken. You know what I mean? It's just very enabling behavior. I don't know.
Well, someone doesn't get like that without a community of enablers around them.
Sure.
In some sense, right? Because at a certain point, he stops being able to do things for himself. And so she has to bring him the chicken, and the pizza guy has to bring him the pizza. And, you know,
yeah,
the missionary kid has to pick up the key for him.
Yeah. I mean, I think that gets into the much more complex psychology of how do people get there? How are they enabled by exactly? You said it perfectly. I don't even need to repeat your points.
I thought that it was unrealistic that she would just wasn't medically intervening. The only thought that I had is that she had her own issues, you know, with her history and her background. And so the thing that she deals with the most is in contrast to the missionary is like, can another person save another person?
Mhm.
And I think she even has a line about saying like she's the only one that can help him or something
Mhm.
like that.
Mhm.
So I think because of her own history, she had her own stuff going on where she thought that this was her job and no one else's in some capacity.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think there was a motivation too, story wise, that we'll get into in our short spoiler discussion. But yeah, it's definitely like I think they did a decent job of complicating the characters. I just was far more impressed with them reading the lines than the lines themselves.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What's the missionary? Was he Jehovah's Witness or just some generic church?
He seemed to be doomsday evangelical.
Right. But then even Brendan Fraser's character was like summarizing what the Bible says. And he's like, yeah, and only 144,000 people go to heaven, which is like not a normal theology. It's like a Jehovah's Witness
Right.
theology or
Yeah.
like some other smaller groups. So I was curious about him, like where he comes from.
They call it the New Life Church in the movie,
Mhm.
Right.
but I don't know anything.
Which
about
is
the
a
New
pretty
Life
generic
Church.
name.
Right.
I'm sure there are many
For
actual
sure.
New Life churches out there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. Anything else spoiler free with the whale that needs to be said? All right. We're going to do a short spoiler chat on this one. We're going to put it at the end of the podcast, both on YouTube and for podcast audio listeners. So stay tuned for that after the closing music. Before we move on, though, we need to give this movie a letterbox rating out of 5 stars. What are you guys going to give The Whale?
I'm going to give it 3 stars because I liked the acting mixed on the movie. So that acting's give it a little bump.
I'll
give it
Go ahead.
James. I'll give it 4 stars.
I give it 4 as well.
Wow. Okay.
Pretty much on the performances alone. I think it's probably like a 3 if those hadn't been quite as good as they were. So a 3 and 2 4s for The Whale. Next up, we've got our top 10 comeback movies is what I have. I mean, if we want to...
I thought you did comeback actors.
Yeah, we decided
We
on
could do that.
actors.
We could do top 10 comeback performances by an actor.
Do you have a
in a
list of
movie?
movies in front of you or actors in front of you?
Both.
I have a list of movies that have the comeback actor in them.
Right.
Okay.
So
I have
I'm
a list
using
of
the movie
movies
as a point of reference to the actor.
Right. That's what I have too.
Yeah.
For sure. So let's just stick with comeback movies and it'll fit all 3 of our lists, I'm sure, in some way, shape, or form.
Well, I think it'll make sense. No matter
Movies with a comeback performance.
Perfect. So these are movies that an actor who has been out of the public eye for one reason or another. A bit of time passes, or maybe their reputation slides. Maybe they're still releasing movies and just nobody is paying attention to them, or they're not operating at the same prestige level they were at one point. And then all of a sudden they get a role that redeems them on some level and reminds people that they can be in good things and be good in it. And so these are our personal favorite comeback stories / actors / movies that those actors were in. Let's jump into it. Why don't I start with my number 10? I have a lot of recent movies, probably because when I watch older movies, I don't watch filmographies of people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard for me to like gauge when Katharine Hepburn's downtime was or whatever. But if the actor was famous and then less famous and then came back within my lifetime of watching movies, those are the ones that are memorable to me. So a lot of these are recent or relatively recent. So my number 10 is Kate Hudson in Glass Onion, a mystery. Loved her in this movie. And it had been a long time since I had seen Kate Hudson in just about anything, much less something where I was like, oh, she's really great in this. And I thought she was awesome in that movie. I thought she played her character very well, and that it was like oddly age appropriate. in that she wasn't trying to act like a younger person or an older person. She was trying to act a little bit like a washed up person in a way. And not that I thought Kate Hudson was washed up. I just hadn't really thought of her in a while. And so it was fun to see her come back, be really playful in a movie, be allowed to be playful in a movie, and also kind of play a character that was a little meta-ish. It all worked very well for me. And so she's my number 10.
The way I kind of structure my list, it's not how good I think the comeback performance is. It's a complicated matrix of how popular they were, then
Okay.
how big the fall or the gap, and then how big the career was at the end, right? So it's like taking in all the variables of like they were big and then they were nowhere and then they came back in a huge way, right? So that's going to be my number 1 when those are the most extreme. My
Nice.
number 10, the least extreme of my list. And that is Rob Lowe. Rob Lowe, I feel like was out there as like a heartthrob. He was in The Outsiders and all that kind of stuff. He had a scandal, which surprisingly didn't tank him forever.
When you
Probably
hear about
should've.
it really should have. Yeah.
Yeah. But he was able to come back into acting respectability, in things. Most notably lately Parks and Rec. He played a big character in that. And he was able to bring his career back after a pretty, steep decline.
I mean, you can't forget his comeback movie, Wayne's World.
I feel like that was during his controversial years, wasn't it?
I'm sure it was.
Yeah, late 80s, early 90s was, yeah. I mean, late 80s when the scandal happened.
Sure.
All right, I wasn't really sure how to order these at all. Originally, when we were doing movies, I ordered them by how much I like the movie, and then when we switched to actors, I was like first thinking, well, how excited am I about the comeback? But then there are movies on here that came out before I was born, so I can't be excited about that comeback per se. So then it's a little bit of Zach's of like how big the comeback is, a little bit of how much I like the performance, a little bit of, I don't know, we have to record in 5 minutes. Let's make a list of something. So
Sure.
this is a collection of 10 movies / actors. So my number 10 is Mickey Rourke, who was big in the 80s with like Diner and other things. Had his own demons and problems and failed boxing career. And then started to come back in the 2000s with like Sin City. And then I think his big comeback is another Aronofsky film, which is The Wrestler, which is the one on my list here. I kind of put him back on the map so he could do Iron Man 2 and then disappear from the map again.
I think mine, if I was to give context, is generally basically what Zach's is as
Okay.
far as how I formed it. I definitely think the top of my list are like the most dramatic comebacks. That's generally a way to encapsulate what Zach said. My number 9 is Keanu Reeves in John Wick from 2014. Keanu Reeves was definitely a famous face in the late 80s and most of the 90s. Then in the late 90s, he gets The Matrix. I mean, like mid 90s, he did Speed, but that follows into The Matrix. He's an action star. Matrix is a huge franchise, and it kind of fits his acting style. Like his character, he's allowed to kind of be wooden and dumbfounded. So like the character itself works for him, and his name becomes synonymous with sci-fi action type of thing. And then there's a little bit of a dearth between Matrix Revolutions and John Wick. There's like a 6 to 8 year stretch there where there are a couple movies that certainly people like. I like Constantine, and there's a couple others in there that I
Lake
like.
House, obviously.
Sure, Lake House. The Day the Earth Stood Still, I think, is interesting. Certainly A Scanner Darkly. But these are movies that, like, when people think about Keanu Reeves, these are not the movies they're mentioning for the most part. They're mentioning The Matrix, Speed, and John Wick. And that's because he was kind of like in this no man's land. And then people remembered, oh, yeah, we like Keanu Reeves kicking butt, whether it's against computers or other people. And he managed to do that late in life and late in his career with the John Wick series, which he will milk as long as he possibly can. And I'm there for it.
My number 9 is very similar to Kyle's number 10. It's Mickey Rourke.
Oh, so it's the same.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
similar.
All right.
Yeah.
Is that all you got?
Yep.
I like
That's
your
all I got.
brevity. Awesome. Brevity is awesome. All right. My number 9 is Joe Pesci. Joe Pesci kind of broke big in the 80s and early 90s with My Cousin Vinny and the Home Alone movies. And then he kind of disappeared at mid 90s. I think he just did not enjoy acting or Hollywood or being a part of the whole scene whatsoever. And then made a recent comeback in The Irishman with Martin Scorsese. And it was a real treat to see Joe Pesci acting again. Definitely older, definitely quieter, but still, you can still tell it's him. He still has that intensity that he had 30, 40 years ago.
Nice.
My number 8 is very similar to Zach's number 9 and Kyle's number 10, and it is Mickey Rourke.
Great. My number 8 is Winona Ryder. She was definitely a known actress, I say an A-list actress for a few years.
Mhm.
And then I believe she shoplifted.
Yeah, a lot, like designer stuff.
Yeah. And then was not invited back into the community. And then Stranger Things happened.
Mhm.
And that is like the most streamed thing ever. And she's probably made a lot of money from that and has had a lot of exposure from that. And she'll probably continue to have a career because of Stranger Things.
For sure.
Mhm.
My number 8 is Marlon Brando. He was a hot actor in the 50s. On the Waterfront, Streetcar Named Desire. He was the next big thing. And squandered his career into the 60s because of just being a difficult person to work with. And he was acting in the 60s, but nothing you've ever heard of. And then Francis Ford Coppola thought, I'm making this movie about the mafia, and I want Marlon Brando as my main character against everyone's advice. And I think The Godfather is his defining performance and gave him his second career resurgence with Apocalypse Now and Superman and everything he did afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
I considered it, but I haven't seen his older movies. Like Marlon Brando starts with The Godfather in my brain.
Well, for a lot of
interesting.
people. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's why you should check out On the Waterfront and Streetcar, because you can see a young Marlon Brando who's, shirtless and pretty ripped.
Can't wait. It's good reasons to watch a movie, I guess.
I mean, I do think it's interesting to, like, if there's an actor you associate as being an older actor, to see them in like their sex symbol days. It's interesting. Be like, oh yeah, this person was also a young man or woman once who,
Sure. I'm into it. My number 7 is Joaquin Phoenix in The Master from 2012. I think Joaquin Phoenix, certainly respected actor since the Gladiator days, since he broke out in the Gladiator. But I don't think he ever really hit the heights of the Gladiator in the subsequent years of that movie. And then he kind of went off the rails in the late aughts and started doing his I'm Still Here shtick, where he wanted to be a rapper and quit acting. And I think people very quickly got tired of Joaquin Phoenix and his extracurricular antics, I would say. And then he released the faux documentary, and I think people were really tired of him at that point. And then he came out in The Master, and he was great in that movie, and it seems to have kind of given him a second life. culminating with his like Joker performance and Oscar nomination for that. And I think he's done interesting things between 2012's The Master and today, and that performance seems to have righted his ship. And I think I don't know if he just gave up on being shticky on things. I'm sure he's still a weird guy and that's still in him. But for some reason, it doesn't seem to come out quite as strong as it did in that like 3-year period where he was just like seemingly off the rails a little bit. So my number 7, Joaquin Phoenix in The Master.
Cool. My number 7 is Brendan Fraser. He was, I don't think he was ever the top movie star, but he was always like the number 2 movie star for like 5 years. You know, when he was doing like The Mummy and stuff like that.
Journey to Center of the Earth.
Yeah.
Curious George.
Yeah, Curious George. And
George of the Jungle. Sorry, not Curious George.
Yeah, George of the Jungle.
George of the Jungle.
Airheads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was the guy for a while.
Yeah. And he went away and he came back in The Whale and everyone's just super rallied around him, especially because he seems like he's a good guy. Every story I've heard about him has been really good. And he just kind of, the industry chewed him up and spit him out. And he's so I think people are right to root for him, you know?
Mm.
Yeah. Nice. My number 7 is actually a twofer, and this is Joan Crawford and Bette Davis. They were 2 actresses whose careers were probably biggest in the 30s and 40s, maybe a little bit into the 50s. Bette Davis, most known for All About Eve, and Joan Crawford doing things like Mildred Pierce. And definitely into the 50s and 60s, their careers had faltered because they were just from a different style of Hollywood. And then in 1964, they were in a movie called Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, which was about 2 aging stars from the earlier days in Hollywood playing sisters living together. So it's semi-autobiographical in the sense of how their careers panned out, but obviously they're not playing themselves whatsoever. And it became defining performances for both of them. Mm-hmm. 2 people who also hated each other. So interesting to watch that dynamic on screen too.
Agreed.
Interesting. Did not know any of that. My number 6 is Renee Zellweger in Judy from 2019. Thought she was really good as Judy, and Renee Zellweger before Judy and kind of after was kind of persona non grata after being kind of an actress who was Oscar winning and had multiple high profile movies that won awards and had lots of prestige. And then I don't know if she took time. I don't really know why she disappeared, but she did. And when she came back, she looked different, certainly had lost weight and changed her appearance on some level. And I think people just kind of rejected the idea of that she had changed on some level. And I thought her in Judy, I don't know if it's a comeback because I haven't seen a follow-up to Judy, but if we're going to consider The Whale a comeback, I think Judy counts. I think she's really good in that movie, and a reminder that she is a great actress no matter what she looks like day to day. She can still kill it on screen. My number 6.
My number 6 is Michael Keaton. He was the biggest thing, right? We got Batman. That's all you need. And then he went away. We never saw him. Disappeared. And then he came back in Birdman. And he sustained his comeback by like being Batman again and being a villain in Spider-Man and being in other things that
I mean, he was in Spotlight, which
and like the founder. He's been doing interesting things for sure.
Since then. Yeah. He sustained it for sure. We're supporting you, Zach. He sustained it. Yep.
Thank you.
All right. My number 6 is John Travolta. And for me, John Travolta was always a 90s actor because I wasn't really around when he was doing his stuff in the 70s and the early 80s. But he definitely had a career, 70s, early 80s. It was faltering. I mean, he was doing Look Who's Talking with Kirstie Alley and some Talking Babies. Definitely remember those. And then Quentin Tarantino, with his big breakout movie, puts the singing, dancing, talking baby guy as a contract killer in Pulp Fiction and totally reframes what we think of as John Travolta as an actor and gives him a whole new career, both dramatically, action-wise. And I think without Pulp Fiction, John Travolta would have been a footnote in movie history instead of presenting the in memoriam at the 2023 Oscars.
I don't disagree with that. My number 5 was Zach's number 7. I think it's Brendan Fraser in The Whale. Don't have much to add other than I'm glad he's back. Somewhere in there, he made a movie called Gods and Monsters. That's really good, and he's dramatic in that movie. It's also another one that's like LGBTQ centered.
Gods and Monsters.
Gods and Monsters, yeah.
My number 5 is Jason Bateman.
Oh. Interesting.
Sure.
He was, I think, a heartthrob when he was a young kid, right?
Yeah.
He
Teen
was
Beat.
the kind of guy that had like people had posters of him on their wall.
Tiger Beat, yeah.
Tiger Beat, yeah. Yeah. James loves Tiger Beat.
Loves Tiger. He still has his subscription.
And then for the most part, he just kind of goes away. And then Arrested Development comes out. And the first 3 seasons of that were such a sensation with critics, right? And then he is able to spin that into an incredibly productive comedy career where he crops up in all sorts of different things. Now, most of them aren't like anything great or special, but he absolutely built a career for himself after that.
I mean, he did Ozark, not a movie, but Ozark is all his creation. And that's
his creation?
Oh, yeah. Yep. He's behind Ozark.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And lots of things that have made a lot of money for sure. And he was in Zootopia.
And the new Nike movie coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which I'm excited about. I think that'll be a great movie.
I am only excited about that movie because of everyone involved. If you had just told me, oh, they're making a movie about Air Jordans, I would have said pass. But when you say Matt Damon and Ben Affleck are making a movie with Jason Bateman about Air Jordans, now I'm interested in it. All right, my number 5. I'm surprised it hasn't popped up yet, so maybe you guys are saving it for later. Robert Downey Jr. Big career in the 80s with like less than zero. Huge drug problem. Went to rehab. Was in both literal jail as well as Hollywood jail. Thought his career was done. And then he was given opportunities again in the 2000s after he cleaned up. First off, he had the I Want Love music video from Elton John. Have you guys seen this music video?
No.
It is great. It's a oneer, and it's a real oneer. Of just you're rolling your eyes. Of Robert Downey Jr. walking around this empty apartment, lip syncing to this Elton John song, like to camera. That's all it is for like 4 minutes, and it's great. I think probably Kiss Kiss Bang Bang could be maybe his official return to film, but then obviously Iron Man, Tony Stark. I mean, like. He is that character, and he kicked off the Marvel franchise. Maybe by your standards, that should be a much higher ranking than number 5, but I mean, pretty huge comeback right there.
I don't disagree. My number 4 is also Zach's number 5. It's Michael Keaton in The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance. AKA Birdman.
That's my number 6.
Oh, you're number 6. Sorry. Correction. Zach's number 6. I don't have anything to add other than I'm glad Michael Keaton is back.
My number 4, and again, I'm going by increasing like the biggest fall and the best rise and that kind of thing. So my number 4 is John Travolta, as been previously mentioned.
Nice.
Super famous from Happy Days, Grease, and he disappears, and then Pulp Fiction comes along, and then all of a sudden he's super famous again.
Who did he play in Happy Days?
Wasn't he Fonzie?
No, that was Henry Winkler.
Young Fonzie?
Henry Winkler.
Okay, was he not in a TV show where he played like a Fonzie character?
He was in Grease, where he plays a Fonzie character.
Wow, maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
All right, so your number 4 is Henry Winkler.
Welcome back, Cotter.
Welcome back, Cotter. Okay, yeah. I don't think he was a Fonzie character in that.
No, but it's a very Happy Days type show.
Yeah, right. He was in TV. Okay, I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one. No one's mentioned Saturday Night Fever either. There's another big movie from that era.
Yeah, that was huge. Yeah.
My number 4 is the previously mentioned Brendan Fraser in The Whale. Glad he's back. Hope he can keep this going.
Nice. My number 3 is a very recent event. Ki-Hugh Kwan in Everything Everywhere All at Once. Again, we'll see if the comeback sticks for sure. But as far as like an actor that came out of nowhere, like I remember watching Everything Everywhere All at Once. I remember hearing the hype about it. Right, when it came out at South by Southwest, people were like, "Oh, it's an A24 movie, but it kind of plays like a big budget movie, and it's super fun, and it's the guy by the Swiss Army Man guys and stuff like that." And I was like, "Okay, cool, I'm into it." Went and saw it at a movie theater. It wasn't until like the fanny pack scene and like shortly after that where I was like, I know this voice.
Oh yeah.
And that was when I realized it's Data from Goonies, because the credits rolled at the beginning. I don't know his name, so I didn't recognize who he was based on the name. I didn't even recognize him, even though you got all those scenes in the kitchen and stuff like that. And I should have cued in then, but for some reason that fanny pack scene made me think I know this guy. And I did. It was Data from Goonies, a movie that I adore, I would say. I love that movie. And I just hadn't seen him in anything. I learned later he's never the main character. You know what I mean? Like I knew in the back of my mind that he was Short Round, and I love Temple of Doom, but when I think of Temple of Doom, I don't think about Short Round as like the top level reason why I like it. I know other people do, but I don't. And so even when I learned who he was, again, he's just Data from Goonies to me. He's not Short Round. I know he is, but that's not what I think of. And so the idea that this guy who I like from my childhood, who went away, who I didn't even realize went away, never thought about where's Data from Goonies. Now he's in this movie that I'm trying to figure out, right? Because Everything Everywhere all at Once is like intentionally throws a lot at you at the beginning. And I realized this person that I'm pretty comfortable with is one of the leads. And he's really having fun on camera. And it just contributed to the rest of the movie for me, even on first watch, was watching somebody who I knew as a kid in a movie have fun on camera and just do crazy things. Like doing crazy things is literally built into the plot. It's like anytime you want something interdimensional or timeline wise to happen, you literally had to do the silliest thing you could think of in the moment. And it just made for a really fun viewing experience. It was fun to watch him do it. It was fun to watch him get acclaim for it. It was fun to watch him talk about it for a real long time and then eventually win the biggest prize in Hollywood as far as acting goes. One of two. And so all of that to me was just a really surprising comeback. That's why he's my number 3.
Cool. My number 3 is Keanu Reeves. The previously mentioned.
For John Wick?
No, I think The Matrix was his comeback.
Interesting. Okay.
I think The Matrix made people take him seriously.
You mean more than like sci-fi action star, or what do you mean by that?
No, as sci-fi action star. But like before then, he was Bill and Ted.
No, he was Speed.
Yeah.
He was Speed.
He did Speed before that.
Yeah.
I think Speed was the impetus.
Yeah, but Speed didn't take.
What do you mean it didn't take? It was huge.
It was huge, but then what was he wasn't in anything after that besides like what, Speed 2?
No, he wasn't in Speed 2. That's how big he was already. He could pass on Speed 2.
Yeah, he passed on. Speed was like 1995, and The Matrix was 1999. It was like
Right.
Speed gave him The Matrix, basically. It's what made
I'm just
people
thinking
think
that
of
The
him as a
Matrix made him, it cemented him as like he will have a career for the rest of his life.
I
Right.
agree
And
with that.
John Wick
Yeah.
was the comeback to that career he was supposed to have the rest of his life.
Yeah, maybe
Okay.
2 comebacks.
2 comebacks.
All right. Fair
I mean,
enough.
one's a debut, but whatever. It's fine. All right. Well, we can relitigate this soon, but not yet, because my number 3 is definitely a pick I don't think either of you are going to have, and that is Gloria Swanson in Sunset Boulevard. Gloria Swanson
That's
was
my number 1. Thanks.
okay.
Kyle.
Well, sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder there, James. Gloria Swanson was a famous actress in the silent era of Hollywood, the 20s, as Hollywood transitioned to sound. Like many actors and actresses, her career faltered. And then in 1950, she was cast in Sunset Boulevard playing a aging former silent screen actress who was trying to make her comeback. So kind of a meta role for her, and also the role that defined her career. If you now go to Letterboxd and you sort her movies by popularity, number 1, Sunset Boulevard.
Nice. I remember watching that movie with the context that that's what that was.
Yep.
I don't think I've seen her in anything else, but she is good in that movie. I like
You didn't watch Airport 75?
it. No.
Okay, well, she's in that one.
All right. I believe you. My number 2 is the previously mentioned Zach's number 4, and Kyle had it in there somewhere as well. John Travolta in Pulp Fiction. John Travolta in my mind is the guy from Grease, because I had 3 sisters and they watched Grease like over and over and over again. And so for some reason in my little kid brain, that movie wasn't made in the 70s. It was literally made in the 50s, even though it was just set in the 50s. And so I'm sure John Travolta was in things between then and Pulp Fiction, but none of them really mattered to me or made any imprint at all. And then I saw Pulp Fiction, and like a lot of things in my brain snapped and changed for the rest of my life. And one of them was that John Travolta, 1, was not in movies in the 50s, and 2, is pretty cool. And so from then on, I started paying attention to John Travolta, for better or for worse. And definitely, I'm not sure it was a comeback in my mind, but certainly was for other people. And that's why he's my number 2.
Nice. My number 2 got mentioned already. It's Marlon Brando.
Nice.
Super famous, and then very difficult to work with. And then later on in life is in the 2 biggest movies ever. Or not biggest, but like critically acclaimed ever.
Yeah.
Still difficult, but at least he's working.
Yeah.
My number 2 is the previously mentioned Keanu Reeves. I'm going to stand by John Wick being his comeback movie. That is a movie where if you show me the poster and describe the plot, it sounds like some John Cusack straight to Redbox movie. And that's what I thought John Wick was. And I heard about it and I saw it. And that movie works because Keanu Reeves is an incredible martial artist and actor for that genre kind of movie.
Nice. My number 1 is the person with the biggest comeback, in my opinion, is Kyle's number 5 and probably Zach's number 1. It's Robert Downey Jr. in Iron Man from 2008.
That's my number 1.
And also
That's my
Tropic
number
Thunder.
5.
Tropic Thunder. Tropic Thunder also came out in 2008, and he
good
was
point.
nominated for an Oscar for Tropic Thunder. And I think the 1-2 punch of those movies Tropic Thunder critically and with audiences on some level, and certainly Iron Man and the breakout unexpected hit that was. I think made for quite a comeback for somebody who had done plenty to dig himself a big hole to dig out of, for sure. You have anything to add, Zach?
No,
All right.
you're so eloquent that I just want to listen to you.
Thanks. Well, that's all I have to say. It's Kyle's turn.
Oh, thank you, James. Zach, thank you also for passing the mic.
You're welcome.
My most anticlimactic list we've ever made. My number one, previously mentioned, Ki Hai Kwan. I think I put this at number one just because I'm on the high of Everything Everywhere All at Once winning, seeing him win, and just seeing the joy in him, how he thought his career was over, and it pretty much was. I mean, he was working, but he wasn't nothing that he wasn't in anything, and he was doing behind the scenes work. Thought his career was done, and then this movie put him on the map, gave him an Oscar, highlighted his talents also. Like, who would have known that Short Round / Data is an amazing martial artist and fight choreographer? And this movie right here put him on the map. I also just want to give Michelle Yeoh a shout out. Not this is necessarily a comeback for her, but I think this movie cements her career and is a defining role for her too.
I agree. Did you guys see that Vanity Fair video from like 8 months ago where she cries at the end of it?
No.
It was way before she got Oscar nominations or even knew the movie had a shot in that realm or anything. It's pretty great. I will link it in the description. But it's like a 10-minute video of her just talking about her career, and then at the very end she starts talking about Everything Everywhere All at Once, and she's like breaks down. It's pretty awesome. I'll let her speak for herself in the video. But all right, that was our list of how about top 10 comeback performances. That way it covers all of our lists. Does that work?
Sure. Love it.
The official. All right. That was our list of top 10 comeback performances. We appreciate your listenership. It was fun to recap the Oscars and talk The Whale and talk comeback movies. Super fun show. We appreciate you spending the time with us. Don't forget, you can always find this podcast on YouTube. Find the video version there. You can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Cinereelists. You could also leave us an Apple Podcast review or send us a listener email to heyguys@cinereelists.com. Any of those kinds of things, we'd appreciate you engaging with us in. You could also follow us on social media on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok at Cinereelists, or you could follow my personal Twitter or Letterboxd account at YoJRB.
You can follow me on Twitter or Letterboxd at Shopping.
You can find me on Letterboxd at PeterSKB.
We're not 100% sure what we're going to do next week, so we have nothing to announce. But whatever we decide to do, I'm sure it'll be good. We'll see you guys there. Until then, keep it Cinereal.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.
This is spoiler chat for The Whale. If you haven't seen The Whale and you want to stay spoiler free, then you should pause and come back to this later on. if you have seen The Whale or you don't care about spoilers, then listen on, because we're going to talk openly and honestly about The Whale. So I really don't have a lot to talk spoiler wise, except for the very last shot of the movie. But Kyle said he might have one or two other things that we need to discuss. Do we want to go to those first, or just talk about the ending and then move backwards?
We can talk about the ending and then go backwards.
Okay. So for those that haven't seen it, Charlie's a guy who is definitely overweight. The movie is like, I guess, the last week of his life. Has congestive heart failure. He has a friend who's a nurse who turns out to be his boyfriend's sister. His boyfriend who passed away. And
committed suicide, most likely.
Oh, did they say that?
Yeah.
They talk about how he was depressed, was spiraling, and then was found in a river.
Interesting.
I think at one point she said after my brother jumped off the bridge. So,
gotcha.
Yeah.
So he's fallen into a depression and has decided that he is, I guess, going to eat himself to death. And in the meantime, save up a bunch of money to give to his estranged daughter from his first marriage to a woman. And at the end of the movie, aka the end of the week, him and his daughter are kind of having it out. He's telling his daughter that she's great and can do anything in life and is perfect the way she is. And he's kind of walking towards her, and walking is a hard thing for him to do at his size. And the movie kind of oddly changes to like Fantasyland, where instead of being really heavy, all of a sudden he's really light, and you see a shot of his feet just kind of lift off the ground, and then the movie dips to white. And
it doesn't dip to white.
There's one other scene.
It dips to that memory at the beach.
You're right. It dips to the memory. It dips to bright. Let's say that. Bright shot at the beach. Kind of like very Vaseline-y shot too, where it's like just figures in the background that you can kind of see. It's a reference to an earlier flashback, right? Didn't they show a shot from that earlier?
Yeah. It's a memory he has with his daughter.
There's a close up of his foot going in the waves, and then it shows this big overhead shot of the beach with the three of them at the beach.
Mm-hmm. So I guess my question is, did he die in that moment?
Yeah,
100%.
That's the implication. And his heaven is this memory at the beach?
Not as heaven. I think that's what he wanted to think about as he died.
Okay. And we're to assume that like the moment his feet kind of lift up, what really happened is he had congestive heart failure and fell down dead in front of his daughter.
His heart exploded and he collapsed.
Yeah. Which was his
horrible
plan in that moment. And I think it's pretty selfish of him to do that right in front of his daughter.
For sure. I mean, it's selfish in general, but it's this whole nother level of selfish to do that right in front of your daughter. So really, as much as the movie frames him as a nice guy, he's pretty selfish, I would say.
I mean, he earlier in the movie, his daughter says to him, like, stand up and walk to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's challenging him to, like, can you do something for yourself? And he is unable to get off the couch and stand up. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think this was his moment to show her, look, I can do something for you, I guess. Like, he feels guilt about being estranged from her.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, dying in front of her in a probably traumatic way, not a great thing. But I think he was also trying to show, look, I can do something for you, even if it's as simple as walking towards you.
Mm-hmm. Do you think he's also doing something for her in his mind? The best thing for her would be for him to leave? For him to die?
And that's kind of
He has this one moment where he's like, I want to do one thing right in my life, and that's like give her this money after I die.
Couldn't he have just given her the money though and not died? Accomplished that part of it?
Yeah, he could have.
Yeah. I don't know. He also makes a comment to her like, who would want me in their life? Stuff like that. Like he makes some pretty self-deprecating comments to her.
Yeah. I mean, he knew he was dying.
Mm-hmm.
He had the means to get the help. I mean, he kept saying, "Oh, I don't have any insurance on my money," but he obviously did have money. So right, I think for him, he's like, "I'm going to die. I'm going to eat myself to death. What can I do
Sure.
that's good or to redeem my life in some sense?"
So, I mean, Darren Aronofsky certainly can be a visualist sometimes. I mean, you watch Mother, that's apparent, I would say, amongst his other movies. But do you think this is just Darren Aronofsky just not knowing how to end this, so he went the artsy way? You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
I wouldn't take his feet lifting off the ground as literal.
Uh-huh.
Do you take Birdman, him or whoever flies away at the end, as literal?
No, he's having like a mental breakdown through the
Exactly,
whole movie.
so-
Every Birdman instance.
I
in that
actually
movie
did
is
take that literally. I think he did fly away.
You really think he flew away?
I do actually.
Okay, well, that's another discussion then.
You think the whole movie was kind of like a fantasy, and this was just the most fantastical part?
Are we talking about the whale?
Which movie?
Are we talking about the whale or Birdman?
I'm back on the whale. I was just using
Okay.
Birdman as a point of reference where another character seemingly flies away at the end.
Sure.
Yeah. Spoilers for Birdman.
This is the spoiler section.
For The Whale.
For the
Bruce
whale.
Willis is dead at the end.
For Sixth Sense.
Yes. Yeah,
One of my favorite TV jokes is from 30 Rock,
Mhm.
where he's like, I finally figured out the ending of Sixth Sense. All those names were people that worked on the movie.
Oh,
It's so funny.
that's a joke from a funny sitcom. Yeah, I think this is Aronofsky just being artsy in a rather non-artsy movie by his standard.
Mhm.
At the end, he threw in one last little Aronofsky-ish ism.
Well, I mean, yeah, it works because, like, right, what's this guy's like big thing? He's heavy, and in that last moment, he's light.
Right.
You know, like thematically, it works. It's just, do we like, the themes he's playing with, and do we think it's clunky?
Yeah, and he doesn't. I mean, this is probably the point of the movie, and I'm just talking it out right now. But he obviously had more worth than providing her money. You know what I mean? Like,
course.
she's never asking him for money.
Mhm.
She's messing with him because he's mentioning money to her, but you can tell just in her actions and the way she talks to him that she's in pain and she just wants to know him in some way. She's hurt that he hasn't been in her life, type of thing. And so he's trying to give her something that he thinks she should have, both the money and him not around, type of thing. And it seems odd that like the moment that makes him feel light is a super selfish thing compared to what he leaves behind, right? Like the destruction of the friendship with the sister, and his daughter, even his ex-wife, obviously has feelings for him, and loves him, maybe not as a husband anymore, but as a person, has some level of concern for him. So it just seems, I don't know, maybe it's also some kind of commentary on suicide and other hard topics, whether that's selfish or not.
Yeah. One thing for me is this movie clearly, and Aronofsky, I think, likes including spiritual ideas in his movies.
Mhm.
One thing the movie is definitely dealing with is the idea of like, can you save another person and those kind of things. And ultimately, this missionary kid is presented as like he was the one that needed help, right? And he was trying to help other people, kind of a thing.
Mhm.
What I just think is like a mix or a missed opportunity for a message is ultimately what the missionary boy should have been giving him is that you need forgiveness in your life.
Mhm.
That man, he needed to forgive himself for what he did. His daughter, like so much healing in all of those relationships could start if they were able to forgive themselves and each other. If the daughter could forgive her parents for being terrible parents,
Mhm.
she could start to heal. If he could forgive himself for what he did in the breakup of his family, he could start to heal. And it's because everyone is withdrawing forgiveness from each other and from themselves that they're all in this predicament. And it ends without anyone forgiving anyone for anything.
Right.
You know?
Mhm.
And it's just sad. It's a missed opportunity. It's what, if you want to deal with spiritual themes, I think that is how you should approach it, rather than this just kind of like trite missionary character who's like naive and also a hypocrite, and you know what I mean?
Mhm.
The only place that's touched is he gets forgiven by his parents, you know?
Mhm.
But like it's so out of left field and random and like unimportant to us because we're not invested in his story whatsoever.
Right. Yeah.
I would much rather see Charlie's character have forgiveness for himself, or other people forgive him for the ways that they've hurt him, but we just don't get any of that. So that's it. I think that's a missed opportunity.
So for me, my favorite scene in the movie, and the one I was actually finally emotionally connecting with the movie, was that final scene where Charlie and his daughter are pretty much screaming at each other, and it seems like they're going towards that emotional catharsis.
Mhm.
We don't quite get there, but that was the point where I was like, okay, this is interesting, like, because maybe we're getting to this healing part, and we don't get there. But
Mhm.
I think what would have worked for me was some sort of healing or positivity to come out of this rather
Mhm.
depressing story. And maybe that's the point. Maybe it's not supposed to be a positive story, but
Yeah, and it seems like he got what he wanted,
yeah.
right? Like from frame one, he's talking about this plan, give her the money and then die. That's what happens in the end. You know what I mean? Like no matter what anybody said to him, he just kept on that mission.
He's also a character that believes everyone is good, or he sees the good in people.
Mm-hmm.
And like we see the daughter, she's pretty terrible to him, terrible to her mom. Her mom even has this whole speech about how her daughter's evil. That was a very play-like speech for
Mhm.
me. And we learn, and this kind of what you said, Zach, we learn that the daughter like sends information, sends pictures or whatever to this missionary's estranged family. And then they get this information, they forgive him, they welcome him back into his home. And then Brendan Fraser was like, "Oh, she wasn't trying to hurt him, she was trying to help him. She is good."
Mhm.
And my question is, and Meg and I were talking about this, was she really trying to help him, or was she just being an awful person and Brendan Fraser's just trying to see the silver lining or the good in every person? Like,
That
has she
one.
changed at all, or she's still the same
No.
person at the end?
No, she did it to be awful.
That's kind of how I saw it too, in that he just can't see, he can only see the good in people.
I agree. I think she did it to be awful, and his parents just happened to be forgiving people, and probably didn't even know where their son was, and is
Right.
probably just relieved to know that he's okay, and tried to get him to come back home. So
Now we have an awful teenager with $140,000 to their name, which is
and one less parent.
and one less parent, right?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I didn't enjoy the story itself. I'm not satisfied at all with the ending. Thought it was interesting, the ending, but I'm not sure that's enough to. Yeah, feels like a movie that could have easily been like a favorite of the year and 5 stars, because some of the other pieces are there.
Yeah.
But it's very unsatisfying movie for me, I would say, as far as the plot goes and what the characters actually do.
That's going to be your review. Very unsatisfying movie for me. 4 stars.
Yeah. Yeah. Because everybody else is so good with what they were given to do, even if I didn't like what they were given to do from a story, plot beat perspective. They all kind of deserve a better movie to be in, I think, in a weird way. I don't know. Anything else with the whale? Spoilery. We have to talk about. All right. Thank you for listening. We appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.